It was a quiet evening when Captain Jack Sullivan finally kicked back in his cozy living room. The room was dimly lit, with only the soft glow of a desk lamp illuminating the space. Jack had just returned from a long space mission, one of many. But this time, there was something different. He was home, in his familiar surroundings, and yet the silence felt almost too quiet. After years of fighting in the stars, dealing with dangerous creatures, and navigating hostile alien worlds, being alone in his small apartment in the city felt peaceful. He had just finished unpacking his gear when he slumped down into his favorite armchair, ready to unwind for the night. The TV flickered softly in the background, showing an old black and white movie, but Jack's mind was elsewhere. His eyes drifted toward the window, where the stars sparkled, a reminder of where he'd just come from. Suddenly, a loud knock echoed through the door, breaking the quiet. Jack's heart skipped a beat. Midnight knocks were rare, and in his line of work, they usually meant trouble. He stood up quickly, brushing his hands through his dark hair as he approached the door cautiously. Peering through the peephole, he saw nothing at first. Confused, he opened the door slowly. What he saw on the other side left him speechless. Standing in the doorway was a woman. No, not just any woman. She was tall, her skin a strange, shimmering hue, almost translucent, as if she were made of stardust. Her hair was a flowing silver, rippling like liquid light in the dim glow of the hallway. But what really caught Jack's attention were her eyes. They were glowing faintly, like two miniature stars, full of secrets and mysteries that Jack couldn't even begin to comprehend. "Hello, Jack Sullivan," she said softly, her voice melodic and smooth, yet tinged with a certain urgency. Jack's mind raced, but he couldn't form the words to respond. His years of military training hadn't prepared him for anything like this. He had dealt with aliens before, but nothing like her. The sheer beauty and power radiating from this woman made his mind swirl. He could barely speak, but he forced himself to ask, "Who are you? What do you want?" "I am Vayara," she replied, her voice almost hypnotic. "I come from the Andromeda Galaxy. I've been watching you, Captain. You're the one I need." Jack's pulse quickened, and his mind started to connect the dots. An alien, and she knew his name. This wasn't just some random visitor. His instincts, honed in battle and negotiation, told him that she was serious. "What do you mean, you need me?" Jack asked, his voice low and guarded. Vayara's eyes softened for a moment before she spoke again. "You don't understand yet, but soon you will. The fate of your world, and mine, depends on you." She paused, as if measuring her words carefully. "I didn't come here to cause harm. I came because you are the key to saving us both." Jack stood there, staring at her, unable to process everything she was saying. An alien from another galaxy, the fate of Earth at risk. His mind raced, but before he could ask another question, Vayara took a step closer. The shimmering light around her seemed to pulse with energy. "You must trust me, Jack," she said quietly, her eyes locking with his. "Time is running out." For the first time in years, Jack felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't a typical mission. Something far bigger than anything he had faced before was unfolding right in front of him. And despite every instinct telling him to be cautious, Jack knew he couldn't turn away. Not now. The door had been unlocked, and an unexpected guest had stepped inside. Jack stood frozen in the doorway, his mind spinning. Vayara was not just a strange visitor. She was a living, breathing alien. And she had come to him with a message that made no sense at all. He had no idea who this woman was or what she wanted, but the urgency in her voice was unmistakable. She wasn't here by accident. "Come inside," Jack said, stepping aside reluctantly. His military training kicked in, and he instinctively wanted to know more. The door clicked shut behind them, and Jack led Vayara into the living room, where they both took a seat. Vayara didn't seem nervous at all. She sat gracefully, as if she belonged there, in Jack's modest apartment. Her glowing eyes met his, and she spoke again, this time in a calm, measured tone. "I'm sure this is overwhelming, Captain," she began, "but what I'm about to tell you is of the utmost importance. Earth is in grave danger." Jack narrowed his eyes. He wasn't sure whether to believe her, but something in the way she spoke made him feel that she wasn't lying. She wasn't here for petty reasons, and she wasn't after anything small. This was serious. "The rift," Vayara continued. "The rift you humans created with your experiments. It's not just a tear in your reality. It's a doorway to other worlds, other dimensions. And it's unstable." She paused, letting the words sink in. "If it isn't fixed, it will collapse. And when it does, Earth will be dragged into another universe, a place where survival is uncertain at best. Your world will cease to exist as you know it." Jack's heart beat faster. He had heard rumors of government experiments with quantum technology, but he never imagined they could lead to something like this. A rift, a tear in reality, could bring alien threats or worse. The very idea seemed impossible. "You're saying that humans did this?" Jack asked, his voice still filled with disbelief. Vayara nodded. "Yes, but not intentionally. The project was meant to study the fabric of space-time. But the rift was created by accident. What you don't understand is that the rift connects many different realities, some of them dangerous. Others, like mine, are just as vulnerable as Earth. We've been watching your species for centuries, waiting for the right moment to reach out. You are the key to stopping the collapse. Your world, your people, are capable of things that no other species in the universe can comprehend." Jack leaned forward. His interest piqued despite himself. "What do you mean? How are we the key?" Vayara's expression grew more serious. "Humans have something that others do not. An ability to adapt, to survive, to think outside the box. Your minds are wired differently from any species we've encountered. While most of the galactic civilizations rely on logic and advanced technology, your species thrives on creativity, on resourcefulness. It's this trait that makes you unique." She paused, her glowing eyes now fixed on Jack with a piercing intensity. "But this trait is more than just a survival instinct. It's the key to stabilizing the rift. Only someone with your genetic makeup can unlock its power and prevent the collapse. It's why I'm here." Jack sat back, still processing everything she had told him. A human, just one person, could stop the destruction of an entire planet, maybe even entire universes. It was a lot to take in. He had always known humanity was resilient, but this was beyond anything he'd ever imagined. "And you came all this way to tell me this?" Jack asked. "Why me?" "Because you have the strength, Captain," Vayara said softly, her voice almost gentle. "You've seen war. You've fought on distant worlds. You understand the stakes. You're the one who can do this." Jack stared at her, unsure of what to think. The fate of the Earth was now tied to this alien woman, and the choices he would make in the coming days would decide whether humanity survived or disappeared into nothing. "You've got my attention," Jack said finally. "But what now?" Vayara stood up, her figure glowing softly in the dim room. "Now we begin. Time is running out, and the rift is already destabilizing. We have little time to act." Jack stood, ready for whatever came next. He wasn't sure how this was all going to play out, but one thing was clear: his life, and the future of Earth, had just changed forever. Jack couldn't shake the uneasy feeling as he followed Vayara through the darkened streets. It was late, but her urgent tone left no room for hesitation. She had told him that time was running out, and the rift was destabilizing. He had never been part of something so massive before, and he could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on his shoulders. The air felt heavier the further they walked, as though the world itself was holding its breath. Vayara led him to an old, abandoned building at the edge of the city, one Jack had never seen before. The structure was crumbling, with rusted metal beams and shattered windows, but there was something strange about it. It didn't look like any ordinary building. It looked different, as though it were built with an alien purpose in mind. "This is where the rift is being monitored," Vayara explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's also where the portal opens. We must get inside and stop it before it grows any stronger." Jack didn't ask how she knew about this place. She had already shown that she was far more knowledgeable than he could ever be about such things. He had seen alien technology on his missions, but nothing like this. The whole place seemed to hum with energy, and Jack could feel his pulse quicken as they approached the entrance. They stepped inside, and Jack's eyes adjusted to the dim lighting. The walls were lined with strange machinery, glowing faintly in the dark. It was a stark contrast to the decaying outside world. The facility was alive with energy, alien energy, and Jack could almost feel it pulsing through the air. Vayara moved swiftly, her glowing eyes scanning the room. "The rift is in the center of this building. If we don't act quickly, it could tear through the entire city." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the facility. Jack instinctively reached for the weapon at his side, but Vayara stopped him with a swift motion. "They're here," she said, her tone cold. "The invaders." Before Jack could react, a group of alien soldiers appeared from the shadows. They were humanoid in shape, but their skin was a sickly green, their eyes glowing red with malice. These weren't peaceful visitors. They were here to cause chaos. The leader of the invaders stepped forward, towering over Jack by at least a foot. His voice was guttural and thick with an alien accent. "The rift is ours. Step aside, human." Jack's instincts kicked in. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They were highly trained, and they knew how to fight. But Jack had seen worse. With a swift motion, he lunged toward the nearest invader, knocking him off balance and sending him crashing into a console. Sparks flew, and the machine let out a high-pitched whine as it shorted out. Vayara moved like lightning, her form a blur as she disarmed another invader with ease, her glowing hands striking with precision. Jack had never seen anything like it. She wasn't just powerful, she was graceful, as though she were made for this kind of combat. "We have to keep moving," she said, glancing over her shoulder as she knocked another soldier to the ground. "The rift is close." Jack nodded, his mind racing. He wasn't used to working alongside aliens, but Vayara wasn't just any alien. She was an ally, and she was saving his life. As they moved deeper into the facility, the invaders seemed to multiply. It became clear that they were trying to stop Jack and Vayara from reaching the rift. The battle raged on, and Jack found himself facing an onslaught of alien soldiers, each one more dangerous than the last. But something changed in him as he fought. He had always relied on his training, his sharp reflexes, and his quick thinking. But now, with Vayara beside him, he realized that they were part of something much larger than themselves. Humans, with their adaptability and determination, had something the invaders didn't: the will to fight for their home. Jack gritted his teeth as he took down another invader. "We're not backing down," he muttered to himself. Vayara glanced at him, a brief smile flashing across her face. "No, Captain, we're not." Together, they fought through the invaders, their teamwork growing stronger with each passing moment. But the deeper they went into the building, the closer they came to the rift, and the more dangerous the battle became. They were getting closer, but so were their enemies. The deeper Jack and Vayara went into the facility, the more intense the fighting became. The invaders were relentless, pushing forward in waves, as though they knew they couldn't let Jack and Vayara reach the center of the building. Every corner they turned brought more danger. But Jack was no stranger to danger, and Vayara moved with the speed and precision of someone who had fought countless battles. Together, they made an unstoppable team. As they moved through the dark corridors, Jack couldn't help but wonder how Vayara was able to handle herself so well in battle. She wasn't just a skilled fighter. She was like something out of a legend. Her glowing eyes, her graceful movements, the way she seemed to predict the invaders' moves before they made them. It was all extraordinary. He had never seen anything like it, not even on the most advanced alien worlds. But despite the challenges, something was becoming clear to him. The more he fought alongside Vayara, the more he realized something crucial. Humanity's strength wasn't in its technology or weaponry. It wasn't in the advanced machinery that other species used to dominate or control. Humanity's strength was in its adaptability. As they reached a wider chamber, Jack glanced at Vayara. She was already ahead of him, scanning the walls. The room was buzzing with energy, and in the center, a large, glowing orb pulsated, clearly the source of the rift. Jack felt its energy, a strange pull that seemed to call to him. "We're almost there," Vayara said, her voice steady. "The rift is stronger now, but it's still unstable. We can fix it, Captain. But we need to act quickly." Jack nodded. He was starting to understand. Humanity had always been good at adapting, finding solutions where others saw none. It wasn't just about fighting battles. It was about thinking differently, thinking outside the box. And right now, that was exactly what they needed to do. Before he could respond, there was a loud crash behind them. Another group of invaders appeared, and this time, they were not alone. The leader of the invaders, the massive alien who had threatened Jack earlier, stepped forward, flanked by even more soldiers. He grinned, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "You think you can stop us?" The invader leader growled. "You humans are nothing compared to the power of the rift." Jack stood tall, his hands clenched into fists. He had fought in wars, survived countless battles, and faced enemies who outnumbered him. But he wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Not with the fate of the Earth in his hands. "We don't need to be like you," Jack said, his voice firm. "We don't need your power to survive. We survive because we adapt. And that's something you'll never understand." Vayara stood beside him, nodding. "He's right. Humanity is stronger than you think. Your kind relies on force, but humans, we find new ways to win." The invader leader sneered, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. For the first time, he seemed unsure. Jack could feel it. The invaders didn't understand the human spirit. They didn't know what it meant to fight for something bigger than oneself, to fight for home, for family, for survival. They didn't know that humans could turn the tide of a battle with their creativity and resourcefulness. Before the invader leader could respond, Jack made his move. He rushed forward, using the alien technology around him to his advantage. With a quick thinking twist, he activated a nearby console, sending a blast of energy through the room, disabling several of the invaders' weapons. Vayara followed his lead, using her own abilities to weaken their enemies further. Together, they turned the tide. The invaders weren't expecting this kind of fight. Humans, working with their unique strengths, had thrown them off balance. In the chaos, the invader leader let out a roar of frustration. "This isn't over, human," he shouted, backing away as his soldiers faltered. Jack didn't take his eyes off the enemy. "It is for you," he muttered. The invaders retreated for now. Jack and Vayara stood together, panting, their eyes locked on the glowing orb at the center of the room. It was pulsing more violently now, as if reacting to the battle they had just fought. "We have to fix this," Jack said, his voice filled with determination. Vayara nodded, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. "We will. Together." And in that moment, Jack realized just how powerful humanity truly was. It wasn't in their weapons, or their technology, or even their strength. It was in their will to fight, to adapt, and to never give up. That was what would save Earth. And that was what would make them stronger than any enemy in the universe. The energy in the room grew even more intense as Jack and Vayara stood before the rift, the pulsing orb glowing brighter by the second. The invaders had retreated, but Jack knew that they weren't gone for good. They would be back, and when they returned, the rift would be even more unstable. If they didn't act quickly, everything would be lost. Vayara's eyes were locked on the orb. She could feel the rift's power, its raw energy surging around them. "It's growing stronger," she said, her voice urgent. "We don't have much time." Jack took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. They had to fix this. There was no other choice. His fingers brushed over the controls, trying to make sense of the alien technology that surrounded them. His training had never prepared him for this kind of situation. There were no manuals for stopping a rift, but he couldn't back down now. "Do you know how to stabilize it?" Jack asked, glancing at Vayara. "How do we stop it from tearing the world apart?" Vayara stepped forward, her glowing hands reaching out toward the orb. "The rift needs a conduit, a human mind capable of focusing its energy. The technology here can guide the energy, but only a human can channel it. You have the ability, Jack." Jack's heart skipped a beat. "You want me to, what, control it? I'm not sure I can do that." Vayara turned to face him, her gaze serious. "You have more power than you realize. Humanity's adaptability, your creativity, it's what gives you the strength to survive. Now, you must trust that. You must trust yourself." Jack stood there for a moment, the weight of her words sinking in. She was right. Humanity had survived countless challenges because of their ability to adapt and think differently. This wasn't just a fight with weapons. This was a battle of willpower, of courage, and Jack had never backed down from a challenge before. He stepped forward, standing beside Vayara. She placed her hand gently on his shoulder, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. "Focus on the rift, Jack. Use everything you are to stabilize it. Your mind can connect with it in a way no alien could ever understand." Jack nodded, his jaw set with determination. This was it. He had no idea how this would work, but he had to try. He closed his eyes, reaching deep within himself, searching for that inner strength he had always relied on. He could feel the rift now, its energy tugging at him, trying to pull him in. It felt alien, chaotic, but at the same time, it felt familiar. It was as if the rift was calling out to him, recognizing the very thing that made humans unique, their ability to adapt, to overcome. He reached out mentally, connecting with the energy of the rift. The power surged through him, filling him with a strange sense of purpose. He focused, pushing the energy toward the walls of the rift, trying to stabilize it. It was a battle of wills, his mind against the wild, uncontrollable energy of the rift. Vayara watched in silence, her glowing eyes never leaving Jack. "You can do this, Captain," she said quietly. "I believe in you." The rift trembled, its energy fluctuating wildly. For a moment, Jack thought it might explode, consuming everything in its path. But he didn't give up. He held on, using every ounce of his will to control the chaos. Slowly, the rift began to calm, its violent energy stabilizing as Jack focused all his attention on it. The room grew quieter, the pulsing of the orb less erratic. The moment felt endless, as if time itself had stopped. Jack's body was drenched in sweat, his mind exhausted from the effort, but he couldn't stop now. The rift was nearly there. He just needed to push a little further. Finally, with a surge of energy, Jack felt the rift's power shift. It wasn't gone, but it was contained. The chaotic energy had been tamed, and the rift was no longer a threat to Earth. Jack collapsed to his knees, breathing heavily. It was over. The rift was stable. For now. Vayara knelt beside him, her expression filled with pride. "You did it, Jack. You saved Earth." Jack looked up at her, still in disbelief at what he had just accomplished. "We did it, together." Vayara smiled softly. "Yes, together." But Jack knew that the battle wasn't over. The invaders were still out there, and they would be back. And there was still much more to learn about the rift, and about the alien worlds connected to it. But for now, they had won. They had stopped the rift, and Jack had proven that humanity's strength wasn't just in their technology or their weapons. It was in their hearts, their minds, and their unbreakable will to survive. The air was still, heavy with the aftermath of the battle. Jack sat against the wall, his body sore and exhausted, but his mind raced. The rift had been stabilized, for now, but that didn't mean their problems were over. The invaders, the alien forces who had tried to control the rift, would be back. He knew it. There was too much at stake for them to give up. Vayara was scanning the room, her glowing eyes flicking from one piece of alien machinery to the next. She was calm, focused. The energy from the rift was no longer a constant threat, but that didn't mean the danger had passed. She knew something Jack didn't. A new enemy was on the way, one even more dangerous than the invaders. "We need to leave this place," Vayara said, her voice low. "The invaders will regroup, but they won't be alone. They'll bring reinforcements." Jack stood up slowly, still feeling the ache in his muscles from the fight. "You think they have someone stronger? Someone more dangerous?" Vayara nodded. "Yes. The invader forces we faced were just pawns. The true power behind this invasion is much more powerful and more dangerous. If we don't act fast, they'll use the rift to launch a full-scale attack on Earth." Jack's heart sank. They had just stopped one threat, only to learn that an even worse one was coming. But he wasn't going to back down. Earth had survived too much to fall now. "How do we stop them?" he asked, his voice steady despite the fear creeping in. Vayara looked at him, her expression serious. "We need to find the source of their power. The rift is a doorway, yes, but it's also a weapon, one that can be used to open doors to other worlds. The invaders are gathering forces from those worlds, and they'll use those forces to overwhelm Earth. If we don't shut it down completely, the rift will remain a threat." Jack nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. The rift wasn't just a tear in reality. It was a weapon of immense power, and whoever controlled it could potentially control entire worlds. "Where do we start?" Jack asked. Vayara turned and motioned toward the far side of the room, where a series of consoles blinked with alien symbols. "We need to access the main control system. It will show us the location of the other rifts and give us a way to shut them down. The invaders are already trying to open new rifts in strategic locations on Earth. If we don't stop them, it will be too late." The urgency in her voice pushed Jack forward. He knew there wasn't a moment to lose. The fight was far from over, and this time they weren't just fighting to save one city, they were fighting to save the entire planet. They approached the control system, and Vayara quickly began to work, her fingers moving over the alien interface with ease. Jack couldn't help but marvel at how naturally she handled the technology. She wasn't just a warrior, she was a scholar too, and Jack knew that her knowledge was the key to stopping this invasion. The screen flickered to life, and an image of Earth appeared, surrounded by several glowing points. Vayara's face grew more tense as she analyzed the map. "There are rifts opening all over the world. Russia, Africa, South America. The invaders are already preparing their attack. But there's one rift we need to close first. It's the largest, and if we don't take care of it, the others will follow." Jack studied the map, his mind working quickly. "So we find the biggest rift, close it, and hope that the others follow." Vayara's expression was grim. "It's not that simple. The largest rift is connected to their main command center. If we can destroy it, we can sever their link to the rifts. But we'll have to fight our way through their strongest forces to get there." Jack's eyes narrowed. He had faced impossible odds before, but this felt different. They weren't just fighting to defend their homes. They were fighting for the future of humanity. The stakes were higher than ever, and failure wasn't an option. "We can do it," Jack said, his voice resolute. "We'll find a way." Vayara looked at him, her eyes softening just for a moment. "You have a strength inside you, Jack, that few others do. But this will be the hardest battle we faced." Jack nodded, feeling the weight of her words. They had come so far, and now they were facing the most dangerous part of the war. But humanity had always risen to the challenge, no matter the odds. He wasn't going to let that change now. "We have to move fast," Jack said, his voice firm. Let's take out that rift and end this. With one last look at the map, Vayara turned and led the way. They weren't just fighting to save Earth. They were fighting for humanity's survival in a universe that had no mercy. The night was quiet as Jack and Vayara made their way toward the largest rift. The map they had accessed had shown them the exact location, a dark valley deep in the mountains, far away from the nearest city. The further they went, the more tense the air became. They were getting close to the heart of the enemy's power. Jack could feel the weight of the task ahead. This wasn't just another mission, it was the final battle. If they failed here, Earth would fall, and the invaders would take control of the rifts, opening doors to attack from every corner of the universe. But Jack wasn't going to let that happen. He'd fought too hard, survived too much, and he wasn't about to stop now. Vayara led the way, her glowing eyes scanning the terrain as they moved silently through the darkened landscape. She didn't need to speak to know what was on Jack's mind. She could feel his determination. They were both in this together, and they knew what had to be done. As they reached the valley, Jack stopped. The rift was just ahead. The ground trembled beneath his feet, and he could feel the pull of the rift, a magnetic, almost hypnotic force that made his skin crawl. He looked at Vayara. "This is it," he said quietly. Vayara nodded, her face serious. "We need to destroy the control mechanism inside the rift. That's the key to cutting off their power." Jack looked around. The valley was eerily quiet, but he knew that the invaders could be lurking anywhere. They weren't alone, and they wouldn't have much time before reinforcements arrived. "Let's move," Jack said, and together, they stepped forward. The rift itself loomed ahead, a swirling vortex of dark energy that pulsed with terrifying force. Alien technology surrounded it, machines humming with power. This was the center of the invaders' operation, a place where the rift was controlled and fed by a mysterious energy source. Jack's eyes locked onto the core of the rift, the central device that powered it. But before they could get any closer, the invaders appeared. A dozen soldiers materialized out of the shadows, their eyes glowing red, their weapons raised. Jack's hand instinctively went to his sidearm, but Vayara was quicker. She raised her hands, and a pulse of blue energy shot out, knocking two of the invaders off their feet. "They're not giving up," Jack muttered, gripping his weapon. He could feel the tension rising as the invaders closed in. Vayara stepped forward, her movements graceful yet deadly, as she took down another soldier with a precise strike. Jack followed, his training kicking in. They moved in sync, a well-oiled machine. Every step, every move, was calculated. They had no time to waste. It wasn't easy. The invaders had reinforcements, and they kept coming, wave after wave. But Jack's resolve didn't falter. With every invader they took down, he felt the urgency grow stronger. The rift was close to full power. If they didn't destroy it now, it would be too late. Finally, they reached the control mechanism, a massive alien device sitting at the heart of the rift. Jack could feel the energy coursing through it, the power that the invaders had harnessed. This was their last chance. He didn't hesitate. Grabbing the alien control panel, he began to work, using all the knowledge he had gained from Vayara and the alien technology they had encountered. Suddenly, the ground shook violently, and Jack's heart raced as he realized the rift was about to reach its peak. There was no more time. He slammed his hand down on the control panel, triggering a massive surge of energy. The rift shrieked in protest, its dark energy flaring out of control. Jack braced himself as the shockwave hit, nearly throwing him to the ground. Vayara was by his side, steadying him as the control system sparked and hummed with raw power. "Do it, Jack," she shouted over the chaos. With one final push, Jack activated the shutdown sequence. The rift shuddered, its energy beginning to dissipate. Slowly, the swirling vortex began to shrink, the dark energy retreating until it was nothing more than a fading light. The rift was closing, but the battle wasn't over. As the rift collapsed, The invader leader appeared, his face twisted with fury. He was massive, towering over them, his red eyes burning with hatred. "You think you've won," the invader leader growled. "This is just the beginning." Jack and Vayara stood side by side, ready for whatever came next. They had stopped the rift. But the war was far from over. They had won the battle, but the fight for Earth, for humanity's survival, was just beginning. "We'll be ready," Jack said, his voice firm. "We'll fight until the end." Together, Jack and Vayara stood in the shadow of the closed rift, knowing that they had just taken the first step in saving their world. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: humanity wasn't going down without a fight.